In a small, sleepy coastal town where the sound of waves crashing against the shore was the loudest noise you'd hear, Sarah had finally achieved her lifelong dream. After years of saving every penny and sacrificing countless luxuries, she bought a beautiful piece of beachfront property. It wasn't just land to her, it was a sanctuary. The soft sand, the salty breeze, and the endless horizon made it feel like paradise. She envisioned spending weekends reading books under the shade of palm trees, or simply sitting by the water, watching the sun dip below the horizon in fiery hues of orange and pink. But peace in this idyllic setting didn't last long. Enter Karen, a woman whose personality was as loud as her brightly colored outfits. Karen lived 2 houses down from Sarah and had always been known for her boldness. Some might call her confident. Others would say she was pushy. Either way, Karen had a knack for inserting herself into situations that weren't hers to manage. At first, their interactions were polite enough. Karen would wave hello during morning walks, and Sarah would smile back, keeping things neighborly. But soon, cracks began to show. One sunny afternoon, while sipping coffee at the local cafe, Sarah overheard a conversation that sent chills down her spine. Karen was sitting at a nearby table with a group of friends, laughing loudly about her latest business venture. With an air of smugness, Karen boasted about how she planned to sell access to her portion of the beachfront. Sarah froze mid-sip. Her heart raced as she strained to listen closer. Was Karen talking about her land? There was no doubt. Karen specifically mentioned the exact stretch of shoreline that belonged to Sarah's property. Sarah felt a mix of anger and disbelief bubbling inside her. How could Karen think she had any claim to that land? Sarah had paid good money for it, signed legal papers, and even double-checked the boundaries before buying. Yet here was Karen, acting as if she owned it, or worse, planning to profit from it. As much as Sarah wanted to storm over and confront her right then and there, she forced herself to stay calm. This wasn't something to react to impulsively. She needed proof, strategy, and most importantly, justice. The more Sarah thought about it, the more frustrated she became. Karen wasn't new to causing trouble in the neighborhood. For years, she'd acted like the self-appointed ruler of the community, meddling in everyone else's affairs. Whether it was organizing events without permission or parking her car wherever she pleased, Karen operated under the assumption that rules didn't apply to her. And now she was crossing a line that couldn't be ignored. That evening, as Sarah sat on her porch overlooking the ocean, she made up her mind. This wasn't just about protecting her investment. It was about standing up for what was fair. If Karen thought she could get away with selling someone else's property, she was sorely mistaken. Sarah knew this wouldn't be easy. Karen wasn't the type to back down quietly. But Sarah also knew one thing for certain. She wouldn't let anyone take what rightfully belonged to her, not without a fight. Karen had always been a force to reckon with in the neighborhood. Her larger-than-life personality made her both admired and avoided by those around her. She was the kind of person who never hesitated to voice her opinions, whether they were welcome or not. Over time, she'd earned a reputation for bending rules, or outright ignoring them, whenever it suited her purposes. To Karen, boundaries were more like suggestions than actual limits, especially when it came to shared spaces like the beach. For years, Karen had treated Sarah's beachfront as if it were public property. She would stroll through the area without asking permission, set up chairs for her friends during weekends, and even host small gatherings right on the sand. At first, Sarah didn't mind too much. After all, she valued being a good neighbor and wanted to avoid unnecessary conflict. Plus, Karen often justified her actions by saying things like, "The beach belongs to everyone," or "Nature isn't meant to be owned. It's here for us all to enjoy." But Sarah soon realized that Karen's idea of sharing wasn't quite as innocent as it sounded. For one thing, Karen rarely bothered to clean up after herself or her guests. Empty soda cans, snack wrappers, and cigarette butts would litter the sand after her little parties. When Sarah politely asked her to tidy up afterward, Karen brushed it off with a laugh, saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. The tide will take care of everything. But Sarah knew better. The trash didn't just disappear. It washed into the ocean, harming marine life and ruining the pristine beauty of the shoreline. What irritated Sarah even more was Karen's blatant disregard for private ownership. Despite multiple reminders from Sarah that the stretch of beach belonged to her property, Karen acted as though such details were irrelevant. She'd say things like, "It's not like you're using it all the time," or "You're lucky I'm keeping it lively out here." It was clear that Karen saw Sarah's quiet enjoyment of her land as a waste rather than a choice. In Karen's mind, the only way to make proper use of something so beautiful was to exploit it, for profit, for attention, or simply for convenience. As time went on, Karen grew bolder. She started parking her car dangerously close to Sarah's driveway, claiming she needed easier access to her favorite spot on the beach. Once, she even tried to convince other neighbors that Sarah was selfish for not allowing the entire community free rein over the area. "It's not fair," Karen declared at a block party. "We should all have equal rights to enjoy the beach. Why does she get to keep it to herself?" Sarah listened quietly, but felt a growing sense of unease. She knew that Karen's words carried weight with some people, especially those who didn't fully understand the legalities of property lines. What if others began to believe Karen's version of events? What if they started trespassing too, thinking they had every right to do so? The thought of losing control over her own land filled Sarah with dread. She couldn't let Karen's entitlement spiral out of control. Despite her frustration, Sarah tried to handle the situation diplomatically. She sent Karen polite emails reminding her of the property boundaries and included copies of the official deed and survey maps for clarity. She even offered to meet face-to-face to discuss the matter calmly. But Karen dismissed these efforts, rolling her eyes and muttering under her breath whenever Sarah brought it up. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," Karen snapped during one particularly tense encounter. "No one cares about your silly papers. The beach is for everyone." Hearing those words only strengthened Sarah's resolve. She realized that reasoning with Karen wasn't going to work. This wasn't just about sharing space anymore. It was about respect. Respect for the law, respect for personal property, and respect for the effort Sarah had put into creating her dream home. If Karen refused to acknowledge those principles, then Sarah would have to find another way to protect what was hers. Determined to put an end to Karen's antics once and for all, Sarah decided it was time to bring in reinforcements. She couldn't keep relying on polite conversations or emails that went unanswered. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. It was about protecting her rights as a property owner. So Sarah did what any smart person would do. She hired a lawyer. The attorney she chose specialized in real estate disputes, someone who knew the ins and outs of property laws like the back of their hand. During their first meeting, Sarah brought along every document she had: her deed, survey maps, even old photographs showing where her land began and ended. The lawyer carefully reviewed everything, nodding thoughtfully as he pieced together the puzzle. "You're completely within your rights here," he told her confidently. "This is your property, and no one can claim otherwise." With the legal backing she needed, Sarah took the next step, officially declaring her beachfront private property. She worked closely with her lawyer to draft official notices and file paperwork with the county office. These documents made it crystal clear that the stretch of shoreline in question belonged exclusively to her. Once everything was finalized, Sarah ordered sturdy metal signs to be installed along the edges of her property. Each sign read, *private property, no trespassing. For good measure, she added smaller plaques explaining that violators could face legal consequences. When Karen saw the new signage, she hit the roof. Marching over to Sarah's house one evening, she let herself onto the porch without knocking, a habit Sarah had come to loathe. "What is this nonsense?" Karen demanded, waving her arms dramatically. "You can't just slap up signs and call it private. The beach has always been open to everyone." Sarah crossed her arms and met Karen's gaze head-on. "Actually, I can," she replied calmly but firmly. "I've checked with my lawyer. filed the proper paperwork, and followed every rule. "This is my land, Karen, not yours. You don't get to decide how it's used." Karen scoffed, clearly unimpressed. "Your lawyer? Oh, please. Since when did you become so high and mighty? People around here are going to think you're ridiculous." But Sarah didn't flinch. She prepared for this moment and knew exactly what to say. If people have questions, they're welcome to look at the records themselves. Everything is documented, and if anyone steps onto my property without permission, I'll have no choice but to involve the authorities. Karen's face turned red with anger, but she didn't have a comeback. Instead, she muttered something under her breath about Sarah being stuck up before storming off. It was obvious she wasn't used to being challenged so directly, and certainly not with such solid evidence behind it. That night, Sarah felt a mix of relief and satisfaction. She hadn't wanted things to escalate to this point, but Karen had left her no other option. By taking these steps, Sarah wasn't just defending her land. She was sending a message. From now on, anyone who thought they could walk all over her or her property would quickly learn otherwise. Still, Sarah knew the battle wasn't entirely over yet. Karen wasn't the type to give up easily, and she probably tried to retaliate in some way. But for the first time in months, Sarah felt hopeful. She'd taken control of the situation, armed herself with facts and legal support, and drawn a firm line in the sand. Literally. Whatever came next, she was ready. With the signs up and her legal paperwork in order, Sarah knew she had to take one more decisive step to ensure Karen couldn't continue using, or worse, selling, her beachfront. Words and warnings hadn't been enough. It was time for action. She hired a contractor to install a sturdy fence along the boundary line of her property. The fence wasn't just functional, it was symbolic. It marked a clear division between what belonged to her and what didn't, leaving no room for misinterpretation. The construction process drew plenty of attention from neighbors, many of whom stopped by to ask questions or share their opinions. Some were supportive, nodding approvingly as they walked past. "Good for you," one elderly neighbor said with a smile. It's about time someone stood up to Karen. Others weren't so kind. A few people muttered under their breath that Sarah was being too harsh or selfish, but she ignored them. She reminded herself that this wasn't about pleasing everyone. It was about protecting what was rightfully hers. Karen, predictably, was furious when she saw the fence going up. She stormed onto Sarah's driveway one morning, hands on her hips, demanding an explanation. "What is this? Are you seriously building a wall now?" she shouted, pointing at the workers hammering posts into place. Her voice carried across the neighborhood, drawing curious glances from passersby. Sarah stepped outside to address her directly. "Yes, I am," she said calmly, meeting Karen's fiery glare with steady composure. "This is private property, and I have every right to secure it however I see fit." Karen threw up her arms in exasperation. "You're ruining everything. How are people supposed to enjoy the beach if you lock it away like some greedy miser?" "It's not about locking it away," Sarah replied firmly. "It's about enforcing boundaries. This land belongs to me, and I'm tired of people treating it like it's public space. If anyone wants access, all they have to do is ask politely and respect my rules." Karen sneered at that. "Rules? Oh, spare me. You're just trying to make yourself look important. Everyone knows the beach should be open to everyone." Sarah sighed inwardly, knowing there was no reasoning with Karen when she got like this. Instead of engaging further, she turned her focus back to the project. When the fence was complete, it stretched neatly along the edge of her property, marking a definitive barrier between her land and the rest of the shoreline. To add an extra layer of security, Sarah installed locked gates at key entry points and set up surveillance cameras to monitor the area. Now, anyone attempting to cross onto her property without permission would be caught on camera and held accountable. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about Sarah's new measures. While some residents sympathized with her plight, others sided with Karen, criticizing Sarah for being unneighborly. One afternoon, A group of locals approached her while she was tending to her garden. "Come on, Sarah," one of them said hesitantly. "Do you really need all this? It seems extreme." Sarah straightened up, brushing dirt off her hands before responding. "Extreme? Maybe. But necessary? Absolutely. For years, I've dealt with trespassing and disrespect because I hoped things would improve on their own. They didn't. So now, I'm taking steps to protect my home and my peace of mind." Her words silenced the critics, for the moment, at least. Deep down, Sarah knew some people might never fully understand why she'd gone to such lengths. But she also knew that actions spoke louder than words. By standing firm, she was sending a powerful message. This was her land, and she wouldn't tolerate anyone crossing the line again. As the days passed, Sarah noticed fewer intrusions and fewer arguments. The fence wasn't just a physical barrier, it was a psychological one too. People began to respect her wishes, either out of fear of consequences or simply because they realized she meant business. And though Karen still simmered with resentment, even she seemed reluctant to test Sarah's resolve. For the first time in months, Sarah felt a sense of calm wash over her. Her sanctuary was finally secure. Just when Sarah thought the worst of the drama was behind her, Karen decided to escalate things in a way that no one saw coming. Determined to prove a point, or perhaps out of sheer spite, Karen announced plans to host a public event on the disputed stretch of beachfront. She called it a community beach day and advertised it heavily online and around town. Flyers were posted on bulletin boards at local coffee shops, grocery stores, and even the library. The posters promised food trucks, live music, and activities for kids, all set to take place on Sarah's private property. Sarah couldn't believe what she was seeing. How could Karen blatantly disregard all the boundaries she'd worked so hard to establish? The signs were clear, the fence was up, and the legal documents were filed. Yet here was Karen, acting as if none of it mattered. It was as though she believed sheer audacity could override the law. When Sarah confronted her about it, Karen smirked. "Oh, relax," she said dismissively. "It's just a little get-together. People love these kinds of events. You should be thanking me for bringing positivity to the neighborhood." "Positivity?" Sarah shot back, incredulous. "You're planning this on my land without permission. That's not positivity. That's trespassing." Karen rolled her eyes. "Your land is part of the beach. Everyone knows beaches are meant to be shared. Stop being so selfish." Fuming but determined, Sarah knew she couldn't let this slide. If Karen got away with hosting an event on her property, it would undermine everything she'd fought for. So she sprang into action. First, she contacted her lawyer to confirm her next steps. He advised her to send Karen a formal cease and desist letter, warning her that any attempt to use the property would result in legal consequences. Sarah delivered the letter personally, making sure Karen understood the seriousness of the situation. But Karen wasn't deterred. Instead, she doubled down, accusing Sarah of trying to ruin something fun for the community. "You're just jealous because I'm doing something good while you sit there hoarding your precious sand," Karen snapped during one heated exchange. The day of the event arrived, and Sarah braced herself for the worst. As expected, a small crowd gathered near the entrance to her property, lured by promises of free snacks and entertainment. Karen stood at the gate, welcoming people with exaggerated cheerfulness. When Sarah appeared, clipboard in hand and determination etched on her face, the atmosphere shifted instantly. "I'm sorry, but this event cannot happen here," Sarah announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "This is private property and unauthorized access is prohibited." A murmur rippled through the crowd as people exchanged confused glances. Some looked embarrassed, realizing they might have been unknowingly complicit in trespassing. Others seemed annoyed, blaming Sarah for ruining their afternoon. Karen seized the moment to play the victim. "See what I mean?" she exclaimed dramatically. "She doesn't care about anyone but herself." Sarah ignored Karen's theatrics and addressed the crowd directly. I understand you came here for a fun day, and I apologize for the inconvenience, but this land belongs to me, and I've taken legal steps to protect it. Hosting an event here without my permission isn't just disrespectful, it's illegal." Her calm, factual tone began to sway the crowd. Several attendees glanced at the locked gate and the private property signs before quietly leaving. One mother even approached Sarah afterward to thank her for explaining the situation. "I had no idea this was private land," she admitted. "We'll find somewhere else to go." As the crowd dispersed, Karen grew increasingly agitated. She tried rallying the remaining stragglers, insisting they stay and stand up for community rights. But without momentum or support, her efforts fell flat. Eventually, she stormed off in frustration, muttering under her breath about how unfair everything was. Later that evening, Sarah sat on her porch, watching the tide roll in. Despite the chaos of the day, she felt a quiet sense of victory. Not only had she stopped Karen's scheme, but she'd also educated others about the importance of respecting property rights. It wasn't easy standing alone against someone as relentless as Karen, but Sarah knew she'd done the right thing. The beachfront was safe. For now. The failed Community Beach Day marked a turning point in Sarah's battle with Karen. Humiliated by the public fallout and unable to rally support for her cause, Karen retreated into a simmering silence. Gone were the loud confrontations and defiant trespasses. Instead, she adopted a sullen demeanor, avoiding eye contact whenever their paths crossed. For Sarah, this newfound quiet was both a relief and a sign that her persistence had paid off. But Sarah didn't stop there. She knew that while Karen might have backed down temporarily, the issue wouldn't truly be resolved until it was clear to everyone, Karen included, that her property rights were non-negotiable. To reinforce this message, Sarah decided to take additional steps to ensure her land remained protected. She upgraded the surveillance system along her fence line, installing motion-activated lights and cameras that would deter any nighttime intrusions. She also hired a local security company to conduct regular patrols of the area, just in case Karen or anyone else tried to test her defenses. Meanwhile, word of Sarah's victory spread throughout the neighborhood. Some residents who had initially criticized her actions began to see things differently. They realized that Sarah wasn't being selfish. She was simply standing up for herself in a way many others might not have dared to do. A few even approached her privately to apologize for doubting her intentions. "I thought you were overreacting at first," one neighbor admitted sheepishly. "But after seeing how Karen acted, I get it now. You did what you had to do." Others still sided with Karen, whispering behind Sarah's back about how cold or unfriendly she was. But Sarah didn't let those opinions bother her anymore. She'd learned an important lesson during this ordeal. Pleasing everyone was impossible. What mattered most was staying true to herself and protecting what was rightfully hers. Over time, life on the beach returned to its peaceful rhythm, or as close to peace as could exist, with Karen living nearby. Sarah reopened her sanctuary to a select group of trusted friends and family members who respected her rules. On weekends, laughter echoed across the sand as they gathered for barbecues, picnics, and bonfires. The difference now was that every guest understood the importance of respecting Sarah's boundaries. There were no more littered soda cans or uninvited parties. Instead, the beachfront became exactly what Sarah had always envisioned, a place of calm, beauty, and harmony. As for Karen, her reputation suffered irreparable damage. Her attempts to paint Sarah as the villain only made her come across as bitter and unreasonable. Neighbors tired of her constant complaining and grandstanding, and soon, invitations to community events stopped coming her way. It was as if the town itself had collectively decided that enough was enough. While Karen continued to live 2 houses down, she became increasingly isolated, a stark contrast to the vibrant social butterfly she once pretended to be. For Sarah, the whole experience served as a powerful reminder of the importance of resilience. Standing up to someone like Karen hadn't been easy. There were moments when doubt crept in, when she wondered if fighting back was worth the effort. But looking out at her pristine beachfront now, She knew she'd made the right choice. Every sign, every camera, every locked gate symbolized her determination to protect not just her property, but also her peace of mind. And though Karen's presence still lingered in the background like a distant storm cloud, Sarah refused to let it overshadow her happiness. She poured her energy into enjoying her little slice of paradise, knowing that she'd earned every moment of tranquility. The beachfront wasn't just a piece of land. It was proof that sometimes standing your ground is the only way to find lasting peace. As the months rolled by, Sarah found herself reflecting on everything that had happened. The battle with Karen wasn't just about a piece of land. It was about principles, boundaries, and the courage to stand up for what was right. At first, Sarah had seen her beachfront as simply a dream come true, a personal retreat where she could escape life's stresses. But through the conflict, it had transformed into something more meaningful, a symbol of resilience and self-respect. One evening, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Sarah sat on her porch with a cup of tea. She watched the waves roll gently onto the shore, their rhythm steady and calming. It struck her how much this place mirrored her own journey, turbulent at times, but ultimately peaceful when respect and order were restored. She realized that while Karen had tried to disrupt her sanctuary, she had unintentionally taught Sarah an invaluable lesson. Sometimes kindness alone isn't enough. Sometimes protecting what you love requires strength, determination, and action. Sarah also noticed changes within herself. Before the feud, she might have hesitated to assert herself or feared being labeled difficult if she stood her ground. But now she felt empowered. She understood that speaking up didn't make her selfish, it made her strong. And though some neighbors still whispered behind her back, she no longer cared what they thought. What mattered was that she'd stayed true to her values and proven that fairness and respect weren't negotiable. Karen, on the other hand, seemed to fade into the background of the neighborhood. Her once boisterous personality dulled under the weight of her failed attempts to control the situation. People grew tired of her complaints and excuses, and over time, she became something of a cautionary tale. Parents warned their kids not to act entitled like Karen. Even local business owners joked about her infamous beach day fiasco. While Sarah didn't take pleasure in seeing someone struggle, she couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Karen's downfall wasn't caused by anyone else. It was the result of her own arrogance and refusal to respect others' rights. The community itself began to shift in subtle ways. Neighbors who had once dismissed Sarah as overly strict started approaching her with questions about property lines and boundary disputes. They admired her ability to handle difficult situations with grace and resolve, and many sought her advice on similar matters. Sarah welcomed these conversations, happy to share what she'd learned. In a way, her experience had turned her into an advocate, not just for herself, but for anyone facing similar challenges. On weekends, Sarah opened her beachfront to friends and family who appreciated its beauty and tranquility. Together, they laughed, shared stories, and created memories against the backdrop of the ocean. These moments reminded Sarah why she'd fought so hard to protect this space. It wasn't just land. It was a haven, a place where people could connect without drama or conflict. Each gathering reinforced her belief that good things come to those who are willing to fight for them. Looking ahead, Sarah knew there would always be obstacles in life. Whether it was dealing with difficult people or navigating unexpected challenges, the world rarely offered smooth sailing. But she also knew she was stronger than she'd ever imagined. If she could stand up to someone as relentless as Karen, she could face almost anything. In the end, Sarah's story became a quiet legend in the small coastal town, a testament to the power of perseverance and integrity. For Karen, it served as a reminder that entitlement has consequences. And for everyone else, it was proof that standing your ground doesn't mean you're shutting people out. It means you're creating space for peace, respect, and fairness to flourish. As Sarah sipped her tea and gazed at the endless horizon, she felt grateful, not just for her beachfront, but for the lessons it had taught her along the way.